Despite Elon Musk just ruining Twitter when he bought it like a buffoon, that's a topic for another day. There are still, big news that breaks on Twitter. You can still find out a lot of information on, I guess, X. I mean, I didn't even call it the right platform, which would lead into the whole Elon screwed it up. But there was a report from a former sports reporter who probably would have been verified before Elon Musk bought Twitter, that said that Utah is strongly considering joining the Atlantic Coast Conference, that Utah is an option for the ACC, and that they are already itching and looking to get out of the Big 12. That coming from a important, verifiable, and credible reporter raises your eyebrows a little bit. Like, wait, Utah, who is getting out of the Pac-12 along with damn near everybody else and is joining the Big 12, is an option for the ACC. And at the surface, that doesn't pass the smell test. Like, it doesn't, like, okay, why would Utah be looking at the ACC when it's got a home in the Big 12? Now, that home in the Big 12 might not be ideal. You might only be happy that you are with your former Pac-12 brethren. But the alternative is the American, the Mountain West, going back to the schools that you used to have a relationship with after. It's sort of like some 42-year-old pitcher being in Double-A. Hey, yeah, I was in the show for a couple of years there. We had some big times. Yeah, I played in the World Series, or in Utah's case, played in the Rose Bowl. But here I am back with you guys. Awesome. Cool. No, it's great to be here. That's the alternative. And so when that's the alternative, you take the Big 12, and it might not be a match made in heaven, but it sure beats not having a match. And so the idea that Utah would ever even remotely be an option for the ACC, or that anybody outside of, your Tulane's, Memphis, East Carolina, Temple would be looking at joining the ACC right now would be a fool's errand. There's a prevailing thought. I'm on that train that the ACC, as we know it, is on its last legs. That Florida State, Clemson, Miami, North Carolina don't want to be a part of that league any longer. And that probably trickles down to Virginia and Virginia Tech and Georgia Tech. So you get a zombified version of the ACC. But I think its days viewed as a power conference are coming to a close relatively soon. Now, this doesn't get wrapped up, by the time the football season starts or anything like that. But by 2026, don't be shocked if the ACC is essentially the mismatch of former Conference USA / Big East schools. And that's where we sit. But the idea that Utah is going to join the ACC never passed the smell test. It never felt as if oh, yeah, that makes a lot of logical sense. Now, I don't know that you could argue that USC and UCLA joining the Big Ten at the time felt like that made a ton of sense, but because of who it came from, because John Wilner and John Canizano say, hey, this is what's going on, there's credibility to that, and it wasn't very long later that it was confirmed that USC and UCLA were joining the Big Ten. So I'm not discounting the idea that crazy shit has happened in college sports in the last decade, but Utah to the ACC is so their lacrosse team can have a conference home? What are you talking about? But the idea was, well, Utah was promised that they would get $52 million, at least $50 million a year if they joined the Big 12. And if they join the ACC, that could jump up exponentially, because if they win the conference, the ACC is talking about redoing their conference payouts, and Utah could get more. Okay. I don't know how many schools, especially ones that aren't, like Utah's not a blue blood in football, in basketball. They're just not. I don't know how many non-blue blood schools would chase conference affiliation under the guise of the potential of more money, that if we perform well in the conference, we will get a bonus. If your options are, you can get $52 million guaranteed in the Big 12 per year on average. And you're going to get like $35 million in the ACC, but that could jump up as high as $75 million if you win the conference in every sport. Damn near every athletic department in America is going to say, yeah, we're going to take the 52 guaranteed and let the chips fall where they may. Like, I'll take our chances that there's a $17 million discrepancy and I have to win my way up to $75 million. We'll just take the 52. They'll slap the deal or no deal button. Howie Mandel will shake their hand and they'll walk off into the sunset. That's just how it's going to be for the overwhelming majority of schools. So it never passed the smell test, and Utah has come out and denied and said, we're proud to be entering into membership in the Big 12. They said some other bullcrap about, like, oh, we're such an esteemed conference, whatever. And then said a report over the weekend that suggested otherwise is completely fabricated and irresponsible. Now, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. We've talked about this before. I'm not one of the, well, that's what they want you to believe. But like, that's you can come out and say, no, that's what's going on the tweet machine is balderdash. Ain't happening. And I don't think you need a bigger denial than that. Like, one, that's as strong as you get, but two, they even have to address it feels ridiculous to me. The idea that if the ACC, I believe firmly that the ACC is probably preparing to lose Clemson and Florida State and Miami and North Carolina. And they're probably going to feel dumb when they lose Virginia and Virginia Tech or Georgia Tech or whoever else follows out the door, because the ACC is going to be a Tulane, Louisville, Memphis conference, Boston College, Syracuse, Wake Forest in the not distant future. I think South Florida. I think it's not that far off. But the idea that they're going to like expand with Washington State and Oregon State and Utah, and that will be their kind of Western division of Utah, Washington State, Oregon State, Stanford, Cal, and San Diego State, it just doesn't add up. It doesn't make any sense. Like, what do they gain from all of that? Oh, not a whole lot. Okay, well, then that's probably not going to happen. Like, all of these things can be figured out pretty quickly if you just start questioning things with the question starting with why. If you are, why would Utah want to join the ACC? Is there not an obvious answer? Okay, well, then the next step, why would the ACC want to expand with Utah? You don't know. I don't know. No one really knows. Okay, well, why would this come out, and why would this come from a former reporter who's just kind of airing dirty laundry on the old tweet machine? There's not a great answer for any of those. So, like, those things don't add up. They don't stack up. So it doesn't make any sense why Utah would join the ACC when they just found a life raft, and a really nice life raft at that, in the Big 12. Geographically, it's a little diverse, and they might not be thrilled with that because Utah, one of their big gripes is, like, we get students from the state of Utah, but then we also get some from California because we're a Pac-12 school. And it's the same. A lot of schools will say, like, Western Kentucky and Middle Tennessee State considered joining the MAC out of Conference USA, and Middle Tennessee balked at it, saying, like, we get a bunch of our students from schools in states that are current Conference USA. We don't get a bunch of kids from Michigan, Ohio, and Indiana. So that would be a net loss for us. Utah got kids out of California. They go to the University of Utah. They come from Arizona, come from Colorado. They're not coming from North Carolina. They're not coming from Florida. They're not coming from South Carolina, Massachusetts, Virginia. It's just not where they get their students from. So when you've already got a life raft, which is like Stanford and Cal are in the ACC because they needed a life preserver. They needed somebody to save them. Utah already had that. So why would they be looking for somewhere else to jump with the possibility of more dollars being a pipe dream? It just never added up. And I'm not surprised in the slightest that they have come out to say that it is completely fabricated and irresponsible. That's a little strong worded, but yeah, like I would love an athletic department's official statement to say, ain't happening. But that's really what they meant at the end of the day. That'll do it for today's episode of the Daily Huddle. Appreciate you making us a part of your day, however it is, wherever it is you're doing so. If you're watching on YouTube, hit the subscribe button. Make sure you're getting all the great college football content that we are pumping out. If you're listening on a podcast feed, drop a 5-star review. It goes a long way in helping out the channel. See you tomorrow for another episode of the Daily Huddle.